Hi there. The World Wide Web. You know what it means and you know what it stands for. We associate it with the internet immediately, but I want you to think about it something in a different way today. Something else. Alright, I was listening to a TED video and it was talking about how we create links when we have conversations with people. So when we speak to people, each time you speak to a new person, you create a link. And every time you meet somebody new, you create another one and another one until we have links with all these different people around the world. And that's your World Wide Web. And I want to talk about today regarding conversation in the classroom for teachers, interpersonal skills specifically. Okay? So, let's get started. ESL Trailblazer, I'm Nandis. Welcome back for another episode. Interpersonal skills are something that our students really need. And a lot of times, whether we're native speakers or foreign language learners, we struggle with this. And it's a skill that's necessary in our professional lives and schools, just regular schools, primary, high school, whatever. I'm not so sure they spend enough time working on this with kids, teenagers, young adults. So as language teachers, we need to focus on this as much as we can. I mean, we're teaching language, so interpersonal skills come with that. All right? And conversation lessons or speaking activities in lessons need to be done properly and appropriately, and planning needs to be made, and the activities need to be introduced so that students know what the task involves and what is required of them or expected of them. Too many times, teachers, we go into classrooms and we just give out the questions, or we just tell our students to do the next task in a course book that is speaking focused, and we just tell them to start talking. And that is just not good enough. And I'm sure most of you out there agree with me that we need to take a bit of a different approach and maybe do a little more planning ahead of time with introducing and explaining what exactly it is that we expect or want our students to do in a speaking task conversation. So what do I mean by that? I'll give you some tips from my experience that really work well. So the first thing is make it clear what the task requires and what language should be used ahead of time. So a very basic conversation task is talking about preferences, especially for intermediate students. Okay, so you give them a list of preferences to discuss, and the simple question is, which do you prefer? And they need to talk about it. But very often what happens, if that's all the only instruction you give, is they're going to agree with each other and just say, me too, me too, me too. Or it depends, it depends. My Polish students love saying it depends, which shows that they're not really taking a side or giving their opinion. They're just saying like what the preferences are. And when that happens, it's a conversation killer. Okay? Me too is not even a sentence, everybody. And students are kind of cheating a little bit, themselves and the task, by replying me too, me too, me too. So right there, demonstrating that to the students in the classroom is a critical element, and you've heard me say that before, in showing them what it is that you don't want them to do. And you can role play with a student in class, teachers, to show that you don't want them doing that. Okay? The other thing is to focus on the interpersonal skill. And you don't have to do this every time, but at the beginning of your course or when you're first meeting a class, show them what you expect. And what I mean by that is that conversation, as I've told you in previous episodes, is about this. And elicit that from students. Ask them, what is something essential that we need to do in a conversation other than speaking? And you'll be surprised how long that pause is after that question. And you'll get it from them eventually. They'll say that listening is very important. And then get them to ask them, how do we show somebody that we're listening? Because too often my students, when they're having a pair work speaking activity, the one person is sitting and writing on the board, writing on their notebook or pretending to write, and they're not even making eye contact, which is a big no-no. If that's what you're doing in class, students, how are you going to behave in the real world when you're meeting people and creating those links, that World Wide Web we just talked about? So tell them that the listening can be shown not just by the eye contact, but by asking questions. Elicit that from them. Asking questions. Asking questions is how we show people we're interested in them, everybody. People like it when you ask questions. I've told you this before, because it shows interest. That's how we make friendships. That's how we go on dates. And I tell that to the students. Some of them smile and laugh at that. But that's the truth, isn't it, everybody? We know that that's the truth. We have to show interest by asking questions. It feels good when someone is asking questions because it shows that they want to get to know us. So you do it in the classroom. You tell your students how important it is to do that. And then you get them to ask you a preference. You answer with a full sentence. And then you get them to ask you questions to show an interest. A lot of times, you know what happens? They say, why? Why? Which shows that they're not listening, because in a full sentence answer to a preference, you say why right away without being asked. Yeah, that's how you make a full sentence answer with a preference, right, everybody? So challenge them to ask better questions, because that is also part of interpersonal skills and having a conversation, asking the right questions to show the interest, not just saying why, like, you know, like a broken record, like a robot. That's not interpersonal skills. So practicing that every time you do a speaking lesson is important. If it's just a conversation lesson, it's also good to do that at the beginning. Essential to do it. Okay, vital. You know, I like using those words. So, where am I going with this? I think you know. It's all about asking the right questions, showing that you're listening, and making sure that your students know what the expectations are. So if it's about preferences, give them an example at the beginning of how you would like them to answer and discuss and explain their preferences. Okay? If it's about a more sophisticated topic and you've covered some language that wants to be used, give them an example from you doing it with a student so they see what you want them to do. And maybe keep it shorter. Okay? But doing that every time is definitely going to get you the results and make your students understand how important it is to practice this skill. And give them that scenario that when you leave the classroom, how are you going to have a conversation with somebody in a foreign language if you can't even look your classmate in the eye sitting next to you on the desk and ask a worthwhile question when they're talking to you about something personal or a preference or giving an opinion. Giving an opinion, which we'll talk about in another episode. So that's all I have for today, teachers. I hope you found those tips helpful. You know what to do. Thank you very much for following the videos. I love your feedback. And I love American English. Have a great week. I'm Nanda signing out. Let's keep that momentum. Build that momentum. Let's make something happen. You know it. Every time we keep on going with this. Take care, everybody. Thanks a lot for the views. See you.